GM one and all. We're here at the weekly all hands for BCard for July 16th. So this is our weekly all team tactical. We're going to use this time to sync up on work going on around BCard, eliminate blockers, and prioritize our work. Just FYI, the call is recorded and clips are shared on social media. So if you don't want to be shared, let me know. In case you forgot, the reason we're here is to help purpose-driven communities to use Web3 tooling to generate revenue and engagement. On the lag metric side, we have $85 of transaction volume. That's down 115 from the previous week. Only one weekly transacting user. I gotta add more money to my card, and we have one user who's unable to access their card. So that's another thing for us to be working on. And Tom and I are on it. On the team-wide announcement side, don't forget to use the what did you ship to when you do something for BCard. I see a lot of people using it, so that's great. And we have a lot of shipping as a result. Next week, we're going to start 5 to 10 minutes late is what I put here, but honestly, I'll probably be on time again because I was this week, so I guess we can just start on time. I'll just close that off. We do have some standard bounties in case you're looking for something to do, card designs, articles, emails, and for people to start calling nonprofits. So, or contacting them. You don't have to call them, you can email them. So yeah. On the milestone perspectives, we're looking to create revenue and engagement. On the 10 weekly transacting users goal. On the support side, we did work on this strange user bug. It's weird because Tom and I, we can't reproduce it. And so it would be nice if maybe other people tried to log in and see if they could reproduce it as well. But ultimately, what the user is seeing is that they are trying to log in and it just stops at the login screen. But they seem to be logging in from the privy perspective and then from our perspective as well. We added a bunch of logs. I sat with the user to try to work with them. We added some fixes. Tom added a bunch last night that I haven't taken a look at this morning yet. But if one user is experiencing this, probably a bunch of others are as well. So we're going to try to take a look at that as we go. On the anything to add to this, Tom?
I think that's the bulk of it. Yeah, hopefully we're moving towards a solution. But as you say, the biggest thing is we have been unable to reproduce the error ourselves. So we're not able to get a positive diagnosis for what might be the actual root cause. So like Link said, anybody who can try that to log in and see if they can find that bug and send us some more info, that might help us track it down.
Cool. Yeah, and we did get some more info from the user last night, so I'll take a look at that when I can. On the 10 users per week goal, community pages, we added the ability to show multiple content and blog pages in addition to other pages. So it should be pretty easy now once someone has one of these pages to just like add a new article using completely just Markdown, and at the same time using React components. So they can use, it's like Markdown plus React components. And now they can add multiple pages as a result. So I think that's pretty cool. I was testing it the other week and it's out now. But I still need to add the login flow. I kind of got sidetracked by this user bug. Started working on the login flow, but did not finish it. So hopefully if we fix this bug, that's the next thing we'll do. And then adding previews and auto deploy. Right now, it's just a manual deploy process, which isn't terrible, but it would be nicer as an auto deploy. So work on that later. Snapshot functionality still in progress. I'm assuming you didn't get a chance to work on this, Tom, but I'll let you say if that's true.
Yep, that's true. I did not take a peek at it yet.
Cool. And the in-app voting and endowment fund. The June vote is up. Please vote. Everyone who has Black Flag or Bank in their wallet. So if you've contributed in the last couple of weeks, you definitely have voting power. If you have any bank in your wallet, you definitely have voting power. So just go ahead and take a look and see what's going on there. Yeah, we're aiming to get more votes because the more votes that we have, yeah, in general, it's just it's better for lots of things. We can kind of show that it's working. We can kind of show other communities that it's useful and potentially get more funding, which is exactly what Shelby's working on to get some funding from Nouns now. So the more votes we get, the better. So please vote. If you have multiple wallets with bank, vote multiple times. Yeah, appreciate that. Any questions on the community pages or the in-app voting? We have 10 high quality communities. So working on our own community. Arcus is working on the historical accounting, although we haven't gotten far on this. We also talked last week about how we could continue to encourage contribution internally before we try to reach out to new contributors. Like it's really about getting that kind of consistent internal contribution. And there's a bunch of different ways that we could try to do that. We also talked about writing a blog post about our setups, like the what did you ship channel, plus using splits to distribute tokens to people. So that is interesting and potentially shareable as well. Since we're using splits, the splits team is always interested in that kind of stuff. So we could get a nice little boost from them as well. So next steps are to finish historical accounting and write the blog post. Anything else you want to talk about on this front, Arcus?
Sorry, I had to get on the right screen here. It's yeah. Well, so I on the article I just was I had uploaded it to ChatGPT to go for suggested formatting or whatever. So that's kind of where I am with that.
Nice. Thanks for that. All right. Let's pop into our tasks. Honestly, it's most of the stuff we already talked about above. So what we got here? The bug hunt, tracing the login hang for Homie. Thanks for adding that task, Tom. But yeah, we're working on that right now. Community pages milestone 1. Honestly, probably we'll get the login flow is not going to be that difficult. I had already started. It's almost done. I really just need to create some content for it. Make it easy for us to get tokens to contributors. The last thing here is historical accounting, Black Flag Endowment Fund. We have the, Shelby wrote a draft proposal for Nouns DAO, and we have the June vote up. So that's where we are there. Processing audio from the DSI AMA. Jost does have something up in the communication team channel. So if you haven't taken a look, please do. I'm going to review that after this meeting. And same for that Nouns DAO proposal. Shelby, I'll review it after this meeting. And then using an article using tokens to increase increasing contribution at a volunteer organization. That title is really aimed for LinkedIn, and I think that that's legit. And so, as we're trying to onboard people who aren't into crypto, I think talking about how it could be beneficial to them is kind of the direction we're going. But yeah, any thoughts on this?
I guess I should run it through ChatGPT and ask what would be the most effective format for LinkedIn.
Yeah, you could definitely ask that. I think that's legit.
I wasn't thinking. I was just looking for like inspiration on formatting and stuff. But
yeah, I think we'll probably put it on our paragraph blog, and then and in that way we can share it in multiple places and see how it works. But yeah, LinkedIn, like, they have their own internal blogging too, so you can like do something there. But anyways, we'll have to see. I'm not sure the best way. Like, we could run it as like a share, and then we could run it as an internal blog and see what does better. Any questions or comments on our task list? All right, let's get into what do we ship, and we actually have quite a big list this week. So Tom assisted with support and tracking login bug trace, so that's 500 BCard. Links added the ability to show multiple MD pages to the static site, so that's 750 BCard. I did some support back and forth, 500 BCard. Does that make sense? These ones? Show multiple MD pages for 45 minutes and support back and forth?
It sounds good to me.
Cool. Jost captured, transcribed, and shared the all hands for July 9th. Summarized with suggested excerpts. So that's 2K BCard. And he processed the OMF DSI AMA to generate a transcript, create a summary, shareable excerpts, avatar, etc. 5K BCard. Arcus, he entered week 28 contributor rewards into splits, 15 minutes. So that's 250 BCard. Links held the Monday product meet. I didn't get it onto the previous ship list, so I included it in this one. 500 B card. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, if you're looking for a second, I'll say yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. All of the ones that are assigned to me, I'm always looking for a second because I don't want to just say it's okay for my own stuff, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
and
think
I
just
guess
mentioning it in the meeting, that's probably good enough to, I mean, if it's something substantial, then by all means we need to make sure that we get a second and that it's public. But in general, for maybe certain amounts, certain smaller amounts under a certain threshold, as long as you just say it in the meeting or whoever is presenting says it in the meeting, that should count as accountability.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
All right.
recorded, so we're all hearing it, and it's like a rush to get to the unmute button. Unless it's a larger amount, then by all means we should have like a certain threshold where we have to get a public second.
Okay.
I'm
All
in
right.
agreement. I think that maybe put the onus on us to flag any situations that you're reading through that seem like they need more attention or more discussion. But other than that, I'd say auto approve.
Yeah,
Okay.
we should
All right.
figure out what a good threshold is and then document that, and then we'll know moving forward anything over, say, 1,000 or 1,500, or depending on what it is, what the payment is, have certain thresholds for certain categories. So yeah, we can maybe discuss that at another office meet or something like that.
Sure. Sounds good. All right. So I sent out the contributor awards and splits. So that's 250 B card. Posted the all hands to socials. That's 250 B card. I held the Monday product tactical, plus did some bug fixing and support. 1,500 B card. Tom bug hunt for homie and code cleanup as needed. So that's 3K B card. I posted the latest vote to social media. That's 250 B card. Tom also did some additional bug hunting for 2K B card. I held the all hands last week for 2K B card. I did some testing and bug fixing review last night for 1K B card. We had an ops working meet last Friday for 750 B card. And then finally, Shelby took an hour to write the nouns proposal. And that's 1K B card. All right, so a ton of stuff that we worked on this week. And as I said, Shelby, I'll take a look at the nouns proposal in more detail today, so I can give you some feedback on that. And then hopefully we can reach out to a couple of nouners. I think in that proposal, it would be good to say who the multi-signers are, like from a nounish perspective. So I'll reach out to a couple nouners and see if I can get a couple people to back us up on this front.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So for the discussion today, basically the theme, I guess, is that organizations are not machines. So I've seen this. I'm not sure if you guys see this around. There's a desire for organization leaders, from organization leaders. Let's see, from organization leaders like CEOs, community leaders, coaches, for organizations to be machines, right? I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's definitely something that I have noticed. I think that it is pretty endemic. It's all over, no matter what kind of organization you're looking at. Even the kind of literature around organizations or how to run an organization really treats organizations as machines, and that is something to be controlled, or something that can be controlled. And you can see it in the way that people talk about organizations. We're running a well-oiled machine. You can see it in the way that they set goals. They have these kind of cascading OKRs or KPIs. They kind of want to have godlike ability to be able to see what every single person in the organization is working on at any given time, which is honestly kind of silly. It's also, you can see it in the way that they treat people. They want everyone to be replaceable, right? They want you to fit into a certain mold. They want you to fit into a certain roles and responsibilities, and they want you to just fit into that, and that's how they want to think about you, because they want to be able to replace you. They're thinking of people as parts essentially in their machine. And because people are people, and people are unpredictable, they actually aim to remove as many people from the system as they can. So for self-driving cars, AI, the reason for this is to remove people from the process. And yes, it is because it is more efficient, you could say, to have like an AI driver rather than a human driver. Why have a human driver when you can have an AI do it? It's not untrue, but I think like the onus behind that is, or the reason behind that is not to make humans' lives better, but it is to remove humans from their machines because they represent unpredictability. Whereas an AI or a self-driving car is a lot more predictable, right? And so, I mean, anyone, do you see this in organizations? This idea that people want organizations to be machines?
I mean, if you just take one look at what Palantir is doing, they basically are figuring out how to make people more predictable and, using AI. They are looking at ways of sort of predicting behavioral traits. So in the case of a car, I mean, a car's going to be faster and better moving on its own using AI. Where do humans come into this? Where does humanity lie once AI is already doing all the jobs? So maybe it's the predictability that that people want to know. Like again, Palantir and global governments, they're interested in knowing people's movements and people's intentions, and stopping bad things from happening before they get out of control. So I don't know. That's just where you took me with that, and talking about unpredictability. They're working on it.
Yeah, they are absolutely working on it. Yeah, so you see that in like groups like Palantir, even X, right? Like, there's all this kind of like shaping of public opinion, which has always happened, but like now there are tools to make it happen even more. And so like, they want their country to form more, to be more like a machine that can be controlled, right? Typically in the past, we've caught people doing this, but that may be more and more difficult. And I also want to like call out, like, organizations don't really scale unless people can take initiative on their own. You may think you can create an organization of AI agents and stuff, but honestly, that hasn't really happened yet. And ultimately, I really think it's people who are part of organizations who really create organizations. And so if people can't take initiative on their own, then an organization doesn't scale. There's just only so much that you can do, that you can build an organization around a single person. That scale doesn't really happen. And they don't really last unless people feel ownership on them. I could pay everyone here like X dollars a week to be around. That's called a full-time job, right? To get money. But if you stop getting paid, you're no longer going to go there, right? And I think that there are a couple ways around this. One, you can have like some sort of revenue flow that is always like able give you the ability to pay people. But unless people really feel ownership in organizations, I don't think that they're going to last over the long run. And then organizations can't really find sustainability unless they try many different things, especially early organizations. And if you're really relying on a machine to try new things, that honestly is not going to happen, at least not right now. We don't have artificial general intelligence, although LLMs sometimes seem that way. They have the perception of that. They aren't able to do anything new or unique. And it is that novelty that humans kind of crave for their attention. So if you're not doing anything new, if you're not doing anything interesting, then people won't pay attention. And ultimately, it's people who are looking to who you need to buy your products or use your services. So instead of thinking of organizations like machines, I think that we can look at organizations like just thinking about them as living things. Think of them as organisms or ecosystems. So they're each piece of an organization has its own initiative. It has its own needs, its own wants, its own constraints. If you're talking about a human, they might need to feed themselves, and so they need food, they need sleep, they want status, they want new clothes, they want something, and then they have some constraints. Like, oh, I can't do that thing. I don't know how, or I can't do that thing. I don't live in that place, right? So those are humans, but there are also non-human pieces of organizations or ecosystems that have needs, wants, and constraints. So, for instance, if you're planting a garden, every plant has its own kind of needs for how much sunlight or water it needs, and it has constraints of how big it can grow, how fast it can grow, how often it can flower, that kind of thing. So these organizations and ecosystems, when they work together, that's when an organization can really grow. That's when you get that like positive feedback cycle. You see it often in farming or traditional gardening. You usually don't have just like one group of plants. You have a couple of groups of plants that go together. I think like there's an what was it called? There's a book called Guns, Germs, and Steels where he calls these kinds of like plants that kind of go together. He calls them agricultural packages. And so you see it like, okay, you have one plant that kind of, when it grows, it strips nitrogen from the soil, and then another plant, when it grows, it actually, its waste product is nitrogen. So if you have both of these plants, like in one field, you have 1 year, you have one, and then you switch to the other one, this kind of crop rotation makes a massive difference in the longevity of your garden or your farm. Hey, Anna, I see you unmuted.
Sorghum grass. That's what they use. And they plant sorghum grass 1 year, and then they come back and plant wheat or corn or whatever it is that they're going to do. But there are a few other ones out there. But crop rotation, yeah. And it's interesting to think of that in terms of cycles, and think of communities in cycles. Some are symbiotic simultaneously, and some are symbiotic in more of a waveform. So while wheat grows, sorghum grass doesn't, and vice versa. And I wonder if we could kind of visualize communities in that way as well. It might be a seasonal thing. For example, the NBA community ramps up certain times of the year. What other communities do that, and what are their busy cycles, and we sort of help for that.
Yeah, and I think you can also see it like in the crypto space. I think that there are just a lot of devs, right? And so there are a lot of devs. Not a bad thing, right? That there are a lot of devs, but if you have a lot of devs and no kind of non-devs, the devs are all going to be building for themselves, which I think is what we've seen in the crypto space up until now. I mean, so Coinbase Wallet is like doing a big launch event today for their new wallet. I have early access, and it's just like it's pretty, like, everyone's like, oh my god, it's so revolutionary, it's so interesting, and honestly, it's pretty much just a combination of Twitter and TikTok, but with like less interesting content. So that's what a bunch of devs have decided is interesting and worth working on. Maybe it'll be a massive success, and I'm going to eat my words, right? But I do think that like the idea that if you have a lot of like developers or a lot of degens, to have like some sort of balance, you might need like a different type of person to kind of provide that balance if you really want a well-functioning garden or ecosystem. And so as a leader in an ecosystem or a garden, you really need to aim at being more of a conductor or gardener rather than a mechanic. You're not building a machine, you're building kind of like these incentives or these kinds of spaces for these different kinds of ingredients to work together to go towards some greater goal. And so some principles that I keep in mind when I'm thinking about organizations. So one is from this book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And I think it's a really interesting one. It applies very well to organizations. And it takes like indigenous forms of natural gardening, and it applies them to like our kind of more modern world. So some of the principles that they have: gratitude over guilt, stewardship over ownership, responsibility over entitlement, and community over ego. I actually have that one on my wall, so it's sitting right in front of me. And I think it's a really good mantra to remember. Now, from the Agile Manifesto, if you're a developer, you might have read it. This isn't the manifesto, but the kind of preamble to it. It's only 4 lines. The manifesto itself, I think, is only like 16 or 20 lines, so it's not much longer. But they say individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And I think this is really relevant as well. I do think that you have to do a little bit more. You have to look at it more as a metaphor. So individuals and interactions over processes and tools, that I think you can apply directly to organizations. Working software over comprehensive documentation, this you could think of as like actually doing something interesting or fun, creating those core experiences instead of working on like a governance doc, right? Like there's nothing to governate unless you have something that works. So working core experiences versus comprehensive governance. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, rather than always having like in this kind of like, hey, everyone is has to like have like consensus from all groups before you move forward. Instead of doing that, just collaborate on what you're doing. Hey, I'm doing this thing. I think it's really cool. If you're interested, you feel free to get involved with me. Not, hey, if you want to do that, you have to talk to this group before you do anything like that. So it's more about collaboration than negotiation, which I think is really important, and responding to change over following a plan. I think that one, again, is directly applicable. And do these principles spur any thoughts in you? No? Nothing at all?
Yeah, I was just reaching for the mute button there. I like that you call it a mantra. Is that something that you say repeatedly, or something that you repeat consciously out loud or in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I repeat it in my mind. I don't really say that loud, but yeah, like a mantra is just something that you repeat. So in this case, it's just like remembering it over and over again.
I was speaking with this guy at Permissionless in Austin. He was a brand guy. I don't know who he worked for, but he had done a couple of big projects, and he was a really interesting guy. You would probably know him if you saw him. He's tall, has kind of like dreadlock hair, and he's a big presence. We talked about branding for about half an hour at this big after party thing. And he was telling me about the importance of a mantra. And he says that when you have a mantra, like just do it, that's not just a motto, that's a mantra. It's like almost like a call to action or an intention. It's more powerful than just a motto or a mission. So again, something interesting to consider there. With regards to your specific phrases, could you just repeat a couple of those again?
The ones on braiding sweetgrass and agile manifest. Like, can you see my screen? They're just up there on the screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't zoomed in. I can see your screen.
Yeah. So gratitude over guilt, stewardship over ownership, responsibility over entitlement, and community over ego. And on the Agile Manifesto side, interactions and individuals over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change versus following a plan.
And okay, that's interesting. And so, were there more than 4 of each of these, and you kind of distilled them down, or why is it 4 exactly?
Those are just straight from their respective places. They're just ones that I found interesting when I'm looking at community. It's something that I keep coming back to as I'm looking at community, because like I guess like there are, when you are trying to create a community, I guess like people have, well, I guess like one of the things that I mentioned on Farcaster this week is that usually when I step into an organization and their execution has gone wrong, you know, that it was at one point going right. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in a position where they could hire me. But 9 times out of 10, the issue is that they are focused on what they should be doing rather than what they want to be doing. And I think that that's really important. And it's one of those things that these kinds of principles remind me about. Because I do think that it's easy to get stuck in a process. Hey, that's not the way that you do things. That's not the process. Well, often the process, often an organization outlives its own process or outgrows its own process or changes and the process no longer works. So sticking to a process is actually giving you more harm than good.
Yeah. Change is good, and accepting change and iteration is also good. I like working software for comprehensive documentation. That totally screams of Apple. They're notorious for having fewer and fewer manuals and guides with all their products over the years, and now you don't you buy a brand new. I'm sure with the Mac Pro, you probably get something that tells you how to take things in and out, but other than that, there's no documentation. You can go online, and they don't even support a forum, to be honest. But
Yeah.
it just works, right? And when it doesn't work, it's super frustrating. So I do feel like documentation is helpful, but I think AI can handle a lot of that sort of stuff moving forward.
Yeah, and I think
Very
like what's coming from this is like this idea of building software. Everyone wants to say like, well, what do you want up front? You have to say all of the requirements, all of the needs. You have to say all of the stuff up front, and only when you do that, then we'll start building it, right? And so like they're coming, and another thing they say at the end of this one is, while we value the things on the left, we value more the things on the right. So we value documentation, but we value more. Here, let me just Agile Manifesto. What do they say? They say, that is, while there's value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. And so working software is more valuable than comprehensive documentation. This idea that like comprehensive documentation is going to be the start of working software, I think is like something that, I mean, you see it in DAOs as well. People step in and they're like, I'm going to create a 20-page governance doc. Now everyone follow these simple 20 pages of rules, please. And it's just like, okay, that's not how it works, really. Like, that's not going to do anything, right? Like, that's, I think we see that in the DAO space more than other spaces, but it is definitely something that happens in the normal world as well, where people are just like, okay, I've written down all the rules, now let's just do it. Everyone follow these rules. It just doesn't work that way.
No, exactly. And this is why we get stuck in bureaucratic systems that seem to have no end, and nobody's the boss, and they just sprawl on, and they eat funds, and they eat productivity. So, yeah. Avoid.
Yes, avoid. Agreed. I wrote down some implications to this. I don't know if they're true, but there are some implications that came up as I was writing this. So it's not enough to inspire or create ways for people to act. You actually need to do both. So if I have a bunch of people inspired and they have no way to do anything, it's not really, you're not really growing your organization. On the same token, if I have a bunch of ways for people to do things and no one to do them, no one who wants to do them, then it doesn't really grow the organization either. So you actually need both. And this is kind of going back to what Richard was saying last week around having that kind of like emotional kind of connection to that moves towards this action that people take. Inspiration and strong shared direction are key for this. I see you unmuted, Tinker. I can't hear you if you are speaking. Can anyone hear NF Thinker?
Sorry, did I look like I was unmuted?
Oh, yeah.
In my car.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to swap over, but yeah, I'm on my headphones now, so I can hear you.
Okay. So another implication is that many leaders will use money to kickstart an organization. In fact, that's the traditional way to do it. And I think that organizations only really come into their own when people find an intrinsic motivation. So money is an extrinsic motivation, but it's only when you find people who are there, even if they might need the money, right? Like, but when you find the right people who do it for intrinsic motivational reasons, that's when an organization, I think, really finds its wings. And so this happens in the DAO space as well. Tokens are essentially creating money out of belief. That's what money is. It's essentially a way to, let's say, direct people's belief, right? And so you have the tokens now just kind of democratize access to that. And so I think that like a lot of these DAOs that got created, they worked in the same way. Hey, we're distributing tokens, and that's going to do a couple things, but it is at the end of the day money. And when those tokens stop, a lot of those people will stop unless you're able to find people with intrinsic motivation before the time runs out. And you may, or you're able to figure out some way to keep that train running. But very few DAOs have been able to figure that out. So you may want to start with intrinsic belief, right? You may want to start with, hey, who are the people who would actually do this, and why, and starting with that, because those are the people you want anyways. Building an organization around those people is building an organization that could have wings in the future. And so if organizations are organisms as well, they must be born, they must live, and they must die. And I think that is more obvious in the private sector or like business space than it is in the DAO space. So even creating an organization that lasts 5 years is an accomplishment nowadays. 90% of organizations don't last 10 years, I think, or even more. In the S&P 500, for instance, their average company age in I think like the 60s was something like 67 years old, and now it's like below 20 years old. So stuff changes rapidly now, and just even creating an organization that is gonna last is difficult. And so understanding that organizations born, live, and die, I think, is an implication of this. So yeah, I want to get into some discussion. So why does this matter? Why might it matter to you? I just put some questions down to try to spark some discussion. Have you been in organizations that were treated like machines, or have you been in organizations that were treated like living things, and how did they make you feel? And how can we utilize this metaphor as organizations as living things to help us? Or anything else you want to talk about? Does anything spark anything in you guys right now?
Well, I mean, I guess there's like a lot of things that, like my mind has gone in all sorts of different directions. But like, one of the, like the last thing that you talked about was like about the funding and stuff and money, and you think about like, when people are looking for, or when people are looking to invest money or something in something, they generally ask for like a pretty detailed plan on like how that money is going to be used. But at the same time, like, going, or, having that plan, if that plan is not flexible or whatever, or, involves some of the things that like the, I guess the responsiveness that is kind of captured in the Agile manifesto. It's going to be like a hit or miss, and in most cases it's going to be a miss. But it's kind of like interesting that people don't really want to give money unless they have like a clear idea of what's going to happen. But in a lot of cases, like what they say is going to happen, well, in most cases, what they say is going to happen is not how it really plays out.
Yeah, you might be surprised because there are groups of people who will give money without having a detailed plan, right? And in fact, it might have led to a lot of what has made Silicon Valley interesting and special was this kind of cohort of people of like actual workers who enjoyed the game of being in startups And actually, there's a great Alex Danko article about it. It's called "Why the Canadian Tech Scene Doesn't Work." Why the Canadian tech scene doesn't work. And I think it's a really good view at like why these how the game works, right? And so like there are people who will invest not because there's a detailed plan, but because they see what the founders are trying to build. They get an idea of who those founders are as people, and they want to be along for that ride. So it's not that they're investing because they expect to see a return. In fact, they're very patient on their return. They're investing because they want to be part of what's going on there because they got their money in the same way. They got their money through working in a place that that had an exit, and so they were very passionate about what they were doing, and they want to continue to get that. So I agree with you that a lot of investors are very like rational, and then there's a lot of like these big kind of companies came from irrational investors, or whatever you want to call them, vibe investors.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I guess maybe it's kind of skewed in the or like the thought that I was having is kind of skewed in the fact that there's like these examples of spectacular failures where people throw money at something because they see this plan and they think that, oh, it's just going to work. And I'm kind of thinking of that the thing that Meg Whitman was involved in. I even forget what it's called now, but it was such a spectacular. No, well, no. It was. Like there was like it was. What was
Are you talking about the blood one where they were taking the?
No. Quibi. That's the one. I think that's like they just spent like everybody thought, this is going to be the biggest success because we know exactly how it's going to work, and it failed miserably.
Yeah.
And then there's all these stories about like the most successful companies now, where they may have taken some VC money or whatever, but that's like it either didn't go according to plan, or there was something else, and the money was not really the factor in it. It was a different factor. And there's all these stories about, like, I guess I don't know specifically the company, but like where they said like, oh well, they did do like one VC investment, but they actually didn't really use or need the money at all, because what they had worked, I guess, sort of organically.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Canada, everyone is asking for, hey, you need to start making money by your fourth quarter of like after we give you investment. You need to be making money within a year. You need to be cash flow positive within a year. Or otherwise we won't invest in your next round, and we'll tell all our friends not to invest in your next round. And what that basically means is you need to build a SaaS startup, because that's the only kind of path to revenue that quick. And so you see it in Canada. There's a bunch of like healthcare startups, and there's a bunch of like accounting startups, but that's it. There are very few consumer startups. There are very few like game-changing startups, because those game-changing startups require time and patience. They require investors who are patient. They require investors who aren't overly focused on the investment being paid back. They're overly focused on the potential change to the world, and being involved in that is very interesting to them.
And then I guess like tying it back to because you had talked earlier about we were talking about agriculture and stuff, and there's maybe you could look at it from that perspective, in that like there's some cases where people say like, oh, well, people need like this crop or whatever. We'll go ahead and put all our resources into planting that one crop, and maybe like the first year they get the results, but because it's not a balanced system or whatever, it kind of just deteriorates and fails. So then they say, oh, well, maybe we need to like create some kind of system or whatever where stuff plays off on each other. So you do crop rotation. And then I guess you can distill that all the way down until like then there's a natural ecosystem or whatever where everything's in balance and kind of evolves over time. But that's something that the time frame for that is like nearly eternity or whatever. Or that's kind of the
Absolutely.
But like people
Yeah,
don't have
kind of feels.
people don't. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it kind of feels like you're explaining epochs. Really,
Right.
it's like each one of those cycles is an epoch or an epoch, however you say it.
And yeah, and then like I think that as like people don't you look at what your time frame is. You don't have like eternity to think about a plan or whatever you're thinking about it. In a time, and then like we've kind of come up with arbitrary slices of time, and like in business that's maybe like quarterly or annual, and that might not fit the I guess I'm not
Life cycle?
trying to think. Yeah, the life cycle or whatever, or like how whatever you're building works. It's because for business and stuff like that, it's pretty stuff's got to kind of work like within a quarterly time frame, or it doesn't, or it has to be a business that's not measured that way in terms of its like private, and they or people are able to make decisions that aren't based on that cadence.
Yep, and that's difficult. I mean, even the modern political cadence is like 4 years if you're lucky, but like 2 years in most of America, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's that's another example of like arbitrary cadence, and in a lot of ways it it basically kind of destroys the ability to do any kind of long-term something that goes well beyond the horizon of what the political cycle is. And I guess comparison there is like with China, where they don't need to worry about that so much.
Yep.
So that that system maybe allows for some long-term bets, but I guess the question is like at what cost?
Yep.
That is another interesting topic, the idea of thinking beyond your years and even your life. And there are families out there who think generationally. There are communities out there who think generationally. You mentioned China. They think in terms of millennia. What happened 1,000 years ago to China that maybe somebody takes umbrage with or takes pride in, and how does that drive a nation? So yeah, as an individual, how do we think beyond our own life cycles? What do you want to leave for your children? And I think links that kind of points back to your mention of making positive change in the world.
Yep, absolutely. I do think like and they have like that that Dune show where one of the groups, the Bene Gesserit, they're saying our plans are measured in generations, right? Like there's a very Eastern kind of philosophy to that, and I think that it is a difference as well, East versus West. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and when you look, so there's a really great series of books from James Clavell. One of them is called Shogun, and this idea that like and it deals with like kind of like Western contacts with Eastern with Eastern civilizations like China and Japan and the Middle East and that kind of stuff, and this idea that an individual's efforts weighed against this kind of like generational thinking is almost insignificant. Hey Shelby, I see that you're trying to vote and you weren't able to. That is interesting. I will talk to you about that later. Anyways, we are running out of time, so we're coming up into the last moments here. Does anyone else have anything to say on this idea that organizations are living organisms rather than machines?
I think it's a cool idea. I really like the thought of it, and I think that we can always look to biology as a way to sort of think about the creation of long-lasting things, right? Machines that we create, humanity in general or whatever, I can't think of any that have like last forever. So, but biology, we can create and change and develop new solutions as we progress, and so that's kind of our saving grace, I guess, over time.
Yeah, and it's inevitable too, right? Like evolution is inevitable. Like just the environment changing means that organisms are going to change. That is like in some ways a law of nature.
It's progression. It's the next step in evolution. It's what we all succumb to. Organizations as organisms, it gives me this vision of node maps in my head and how different organizations interact with each other, like mycelial networks. Obviously, mushrooms are a popular topic in the Web3 circle because a lot of people study nodes and node maps, and obviously ETH being all about nodes and all the chains about nodes. All cryptocurrencies, right? It's all these different nodes operating at different strengths, communicating in different ways, powered on and off at different times, and they're what make our decentralized network. And this is what organisms are, right? And this is what organizations are. And how do these organizations interact with each other? And how do we keep organizations from becoming hostile towards each other? I feel like there's enough space out there that we can all coexist.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I appreciate these discussions we have. I do think that it's worth digging into this idea of community and how it's changing in the times that we live. It's not the same as it was before. Embracing the change is going to allow us to potentially create something new, potentially something different, potentially something that the world needs. And so I think it's worth having these discussions to help us refine our thinking and the way we're going about it. So thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. See you later.
Bye.